I've learned I'm bad at intros, so we're gonna make this one nice and short. A couple years ago, I decided to modify my Nintendo Switch so that it was atomic purple, clear shell and everything. I'm gonna put that right there. Today's video, my favorite games for Nintendo games are for the Game Boy Advance, specifically the Pokemon's Fire Red and Leaf Green. I went and I bought a used Nintendo Game Boy Advance, and today never work with animals. I bought myself a used Game Boy Advance. I bought myself an atomic purple shell, and I'm going to put this into this, and we're going to make ourselves a transparent atomic purple Game Boy Advance. I've also decided to make this have an IPS screen, so it's going to have a backlit screen. It's going to be a lot rawer than the videos that I normally post, so we're going to just go take it as we go. Mistakes and all. Yeah. Gonna spin around, let's get this on. Let's get this started.
Alright, I'm gonna stop me from rambling there, and let's just go over this used Game Boy Advance that I got. As you can tell, it's in a little bit of a rough shape. There's definitely been some love and wear to this device. The corners are a bit scuffed up, dented in places here and there. I don't like to call this damage, I like to call this well-loved. Clearly the previous owner of the device loved it very much. You can even tell the battery cover there is a different color than the rest of the shell. It means it's been replaced at some point, that's all it means. Why don't we go ahead and put some batteries in it, and let's go ahead and test it out, see how it works. Obviously, of course, I did test this before the video, but for show, we're just going to show you how it works here, and watch me struggle with the battery compartment door. This particular copy of Fire Red happens to be the one that I used to play Fire Red on Twitch last year. If you want to take a look at the VODs for that particular stream, you can go ahead and check them out by the link in the banner over here. So when we load it up, you're actually going to be able to see all the Pokemon that I caught in that run. And as you can tell, the screen is very hard to see right now, which is why I wanted to put an IPS screen in there. And there's my good old-fashioned save file. So, yep, here I am, making sure all the buttons here work just fine. I'm also just kind of wandering around, seeing how its responsiveness. Get a closer look here at the screen. You can tell that you really have to kind of shine the right light and angle at it just to be able to see it. I literally had to point it here towards one of my filming lights that you can see reflected there, just to show off what was kind of going on with it. And it definitely, it was great for its day, but I think it's time we gave this screen some love. So we're going to go ahead and turn it off. I am going to say I'm going to miss that particular effect. Let's go ahead and take the game out. Take the batteries out here. We don't need them while we're fixing all this. And let's start by unscrewing the back off of the Game Boy Advance here. Now, for the purposes of this video, I tried to be artistic with how I just had this screw drop off the screwdriver, and it just didn't work. So I just decided that what we're going to do is we're just going to put that down there with my hand. Go ahead and grab the other screws. Now, the back of the Game Boy Advance has 6 screws on the main face and then 1 in the battery compartment door. I did forget that screw for just a second, so here I am very confidently taking out the screws on the back. I think I'm about to do the last one here in just a moment. Yep, there we go. Go ahead and get that last screw out there. And then I tried to pull the back off at this point, and I realized I did forget this last screw in the battery compartment door. So real quickly, we're going to go ahead and take that one out as well. Pop it to the side. And pull the back off the Game Boy Advance. Next thing I'm going to do is unlatch the ribbon cable here. As you can tell, I'm using my fingers and not tweezers as most people do in their videos. Honestly, it's just because I've got more fidelity with my fingers, and every time I tried to use tweezers for these shots, it looked better, but it was just slowing me down. Once we got that ribbon cable unlatched, I'm going to go ahead and take out the 3 screws that are holding the motherboard into the back of the Game Boy Advance. Put those screws also off to the side. Then we're going to gently lift out the motherboard here and pull it out and away from the ribbon cable. As you can see, I kind of knocked the right trigger out off the Gameboy Advance. Actually, that's the left trigger there, so we're going to go ahead and put that right back in. I'm not going to remove the display here from the old shell. We're not going to be using it, so I'm just going to take that whole shell, move it off to the side, and keep our motherboard here now off to the side. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get the ribbon cable that we're going to be using with the new display, as well as the new display right there. Pop it right down. And then what we're going to have to do now is just to double check that everything is working here properly. Before we put this new display into the case, I'm going to go ahead and turn it and attach it to that ribbon cable. The internet will tell you that this is a rather delicate connection. It is, so just take it slow, make sure you line it up correctly. It took me a couple tries here, as you can tell, but as long as you're being careful with it, you really shouldn't have any issues with this if you try this yourself. Gonna go ahead and connect that ribbon cable right there to the main motherboard of the Game Boy Advance. Latch it in. And then I'm gonna go ahead and just connect a temporary battery circuit here to the Game Boy Advance motherboard. I'm gonna really quickly turn it on. And we've got sound and video, so everything at least works in terms of the new parts that we're putting in. Let's go ahead and unplug that display, and let's prepare the new shell. Now, for this particular shell, I'm going to not be using the gray buttons that came with it. I'm actually going to be using a set of black buttons, which I'll be pulling out later. For right now, I'm just going to take all the buttons out and prepare the shell raw as it is. Real quickly here, what I'm doing is I'm just test fitting that new display into the shell to make sure it fits nice and snug, and then pulling over that battery cable just to make sure that everything lines up relatively where it needs to go for this whole build. And once I'm confident with the fit, I'm going to go ahead and take the adhesive that came with the kit, put it down here into the shell. I'm going to go ahead and flip it forward in just a second. Yeah, there we go. And then just pop out that center bit right there, just so that, you know, we have a window for the display. This is, in fact, where I made one of the couple mistakes that I made during this build, and I'll show you that at the end just to show you what exactly I did. I'm going to peel off the protective covering on the screen, line it up with the adhesive. Once I'm confident with that alignment, I'm just going to go ahead and press it down. Now, there are some people on YouTube who can do this extremely well without getting any fingerprints on their screen. I got a lot of fingerprints on my screen, so don't feel bad if you do. Just make sure that you clean it really nicely before you put your screen lens down on top of it. Once you have the screen in place and cleaned, which I totally forgot to film for, I went ahead and took the lens that I'm using here, peeled off the outer adhesive protection, the inner adhesive protection after I could get my fingernail underneath it, which, as you see, I struggled with. Once you peeled off all those layers, you go ahead and line the screen up to the outer shell and drop it nice and gentle into the opening for the Game Boy Advance lens. Once you have it in place, go ahead and press it down to make sure it's nice and snug. Now we're going to go to the back of the device. You can see I put a couple of adhesive squares down there. I use these adhesive squares for battery repairs and other projects. And I totally blocked everything I was doing with my hands and arms in this shot. So what I'm doing here is just removing the backing protection on the squares, and I'm going to use them to kind of hold the ribbon cable down like so on the back of the device to keep it in place and keep it from moving about. And once I move my hands here, you'll see that it's nice and placed there and readily lined up for where we're going to attach it to the motherboard in just a second. Next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and get those black buttons out earlier that I was talking about. The buttons and the membranes here have just dropped onto my table, really quickly counting to make sure they're all here and they're all where I need them to be. There are a couple for the trigger buttons. You need to attach these little tiny metallic prongs. They become the springs of the buttons. And so I'm just going to grab those real quickly here, find the trigger buttons, which takes me a minute, and then attach the metal prong into both the trigger buttons. I can't really tell which one I'm working on here, left or right. But once those are both attached in, we're going to go ahead and start seating the buttons into the device. Once I've got all the buttons and the membranes in place into the device, I'm going to go ahead and just make sure that everything is seated nice and properly, making sure they're all in the correct place. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the foam that goes onto the back of the screen. This is to help insulate it from the motherboard itself to prevent any shorts or anything along those lines. Also to help pad it to keep everything nice and snug in there. And last but not least, make sure that the light tube there is correctly installed so that the power light can be shown onto the front. And yes, I will admit I almost forgot it when I was making this, and I'm really glad that I didn't in the end. The next thing we need to do is install the motherboard in the device. This is what will actually make the whole thing work. And I'm gonna admit I made a big mistake here. Well, I made a couple mistakes. One is I tried to install this with the buttons in place, and as you can see, I was having trouble kind of getting it to seat just properly. I later realized that it was actually easier to take all the buttons out that are on the side there to help make it sit. And the second mistake is I totally took it off frame to do that. I completely forgot that I was filming this, and I took it out of frame of the camera, so you can't even see me struggling here for a minute or two. And once I realized this, I managed to make it sure it got back in frame. But yeah, so basically all I was doing there is kind of struggling to get it to fit nice and tight in there. Now that it is seated correctly, I went ahead and started to screw down the 3 screws that would hold the motherboard in place. Some of these devices come with only 2 screws. Mine fortunately had 3 in it, so I just made sure that the motherboard was seated nice and well and got those 3 screws in there, as you can see. After that, I went ahead and actually installed the trigger and side buttons onto the device. And once I was satisfied that everything was in the right place, I went ahead, took the back shell, and gently slid it in, making sure it lined up with all the buttons and all the ports and power switch, everything like that. It took me a little second to align it here, and as you can tell, I once again took it a wee bit off camera, but I was a little bit more conscientious this time of what I was doing. So I got this screw in right here after a couple of struggles, as you can see. And then I decided I was going to be extraordinarily dumb, and I totally forgot once more that I was filming. So I lifted the Game Boy Advance here, as you can see, and I just kind of pulled it off camera for the rest of the screws. So they're not on film. But trust me, I put all the other 6 screws back in there and made sure they were all seated where they needed to be. Once I had all the screws in place, I wanted to really quickly test to make sure everything was working. So once again, I put in 2 of those AA batteries, my copy of Fire Red, put the battery door cover on there, and already you can tell that that looks much better. I didn't even have to turn that at any special angle for you to see what's on the screen there. It looks fantastic. Went ahead and made sure all the buttons were working just by going through the game and playing through the same bits I was before, making sure that the start, select buttons, all the left and right trigger buttons were working. It was actually interesting. I had to come up with special ways in this game to make sure I was going to the right screens to get the different buttons tested. I've learned since then that there's actually software you can download onto a cartridge and use it to test the button inputs, which I'll probably do for the next time I plan to do one of these builds. But yeah, once I was satisfied, I went ahead and turned it off and turned it back over to the back to take out the batteries real quickly and put on the labels and serial number labels. I have to admit, I think this was the most satisfying part of the build, kind of because this is what I felt like was christening the device, so to speak. I got these really nice holographic labels to match the sort of black and purple, atomic purple aesthetic of the device. There goes the serial number label, and I decided for this one I was just going to have a generic Game Boy Advance label there for the top. But you can see, as I'm putting it down, that really nice holographic shine coming off the label there as it catches the angle of the light. Once that one was in, I went ahead and put down the battery cover, which, as you can tell, I really struggle with these battery covers. Grabbed the last remaining label, which is actually the helpline label. I thought it was fun to have it on there, even if it's not really a useful number anymore. Actually, I don't know if it is a useful number anymore. I'll have to check. Once all the labels were in, one final insertion of batteries and game, and just because I really want to show off the finished product now. And as you can tell, it looks beautiful on the back. Got a few fingerprints on the front there because I have fingers and they make prints. Game Boy turns on nicely. There's nice, lovely sound coming out of it. There's my save file. Just like before, I'm going to go ahead and walk around and show you off how this looks. And just, you know, every time I see one of these on YouTube myself, I think, wow, that IPS screen looks great. I want that. And now having it in person, definitely love it. One of the things you can see here, if you look really close near the top of the screen, you can actually see the adhesive from where I adhered the screen itself to the shell. That was one of the mistakes that I made. And it doesn't interfere with the gameplay. It actually doesn't, like, you know, get in the way of the pixels at all. It is a mistake, and I can see it, but I also kind of left it the way it was because it's my first time doing this, and I thought having that little bit of personality was going to be great just to show that it really was me who made this particular Game Boy Advance. Over the last couple weeks of me playing with this, I've actually gotten really used to it. I don't even notice it that much anymore. The only reason why I'm kind of going through the game here a little bit more than before for testing is because I wanted to show off a very specific NPC's dialogue that I think is going to be a great end to this demo. This NPC is in a lot of Pokemon games, almost always in the town that you start, except for Gold and Silver where he's in the town. He's in Pallet Town, but you don't start here. Just below Oak's Lab, you can talk to an NPC, and his dialogue here I think is just perfect for this particular build.
But yeah, in the end, you know, I made some mistakes. It's my first go. I like it. I'm happy with it. I'm going to leave it at that. I don't have an outro. Bye!